Well, I see everybody has managed to locate the sandwiches, so we're in good shape. I want to welcome Gene Raven and Bob Brown out to Paragon today. They're from, of course, Governor R.J. Brown. Bob Brown has been in the pipeline business for 36 years. It was in 1969 that he founded R.J. Brown, and he was recognized internationally for his achievements and skills in the marine pipeline industry. He has pioneered a whole lot of developments as far as innovative pipelaying techniques are concerned. And we'll see some of these as time goes on today, so I'll not get into those at this particular point. But under Bob's direction, R.J. Brown has received 7 notorious awards at the Offshore Technology Conference, and I think that's a great achievement. He has many other awards and recognition, one of which was by the American Association of Civil Engineers for his outstanding achievements in pipeline engineering. He is a civil engineer by profession, having graduated from Ohio University and later earned a master's degree from Stanford. And I think the way the program is to kick off is Gene's going to give us some introductory remarks, so as soon as he gets that bite of sandwich under control, we'll go.
Okay, thank you, Bill. We'll just give you a little bit of background before Bob jumps into this slideshow for you, so you'll know how that ties into our operation and what we're doing. I'm not going to go into any background or history about us being owned by Raborn and all that. I think you can read that in the name. That's not significant for what we're seeing here. We're an independent operation here in Houston, although obviously related to the other Raborn. One of the many things that Bob had pushed for, and you're going to hear some of these fundamentals that I'll throw them at you now. He's always been paranoid about project economics. How can you do things cheaper? How can you do it more efficiently? How can you eliminate big, expensive marine equipment? And of course, my background was 20 years in Brown and Root, so we didn't think too much of Bob, but I managed to change my mind. So these concepts in towing pipelines, bundling pipelines, plows, and so on, all of which were intended to eliminate the need for big, expensive marine construction equipment, do this some cheaper way, particularly isolated areas and that sort of thing. So I'm going to show you 2 projects that we recently completed, 95 and 96. One for Flextria, one for Insert. Both of these are in the Gulf of Mexico, and both of them are bottom towed bundle schemes. And I think we pushed this when we talked to people about using this type of an approach. We clearly talk about it as an alternative means. This isn't the only way to go about doing pipeline. We're not going to replace lay barges. That's not going to happen. But there are applications, and it's particularly attractive when we got multiple flow paths, when we got deep water, when we've got reasonable distances between 2 connections, and requiring diverless tying approaches. So what Bob's going to be showing you, obviously the deep water part of it is a little hard to show in slides. There's not a whole lot you can see. But he's going to show you the fabrication process primarily, and then some of the extraneous work that we had to do to make these 2 projects work. Both of those are installed now. Both are operating successfully. The key on these projects now has become thermal insulation. And this was something that we didn't even think about back when this was started. It was an afterthought back in 1991 when we did another job for Inserts. Oh, by the way, could you put in some insulation? We're worried about hydrates. And we had never considered it before that. But that obviously has become a big selling point for us, and it's a very attractive part of the bundles because of the efficiency of the thermal insulation, and also the ability to put multiple pipelines in and actually warm the system up. Now, the project right now we're doing for BP is basically a towed pipe in pipe. We're not going to show you anything on that, but It does not have heating capability. It's only thermally protected by insulation. BP decided that was adequate. But we're certain that some of the future projects, they're going to decide that's not a good idea. They're going to have a way to warm it up. And people are dancing around with electricity and other ways to do this, but it would appear to us that simple, small pipelines with a warming fluid is probably a little safer way to go. We think there's some room here, and there's some potential market. And I think the only other thing to point out to you is that we're probably kind of early on the learning curve here. There's only been 10 of these systems installed, and we'll be talking about 4 more here now for BP. So there's plenty of room yet for improvement, innovations, changes, and that's where we want to be. That's the thing we want to focus on, and that's the thing that we're following. Like that, Bob, just jump to him, right? And he knows what he's talking about, so I don't think you're going to have any trouble with that.
It's nice to have a captive audience here.
You can't get away.
The slides that we're showing here are really the last 2 projects that we've completed for InSearch and FlexTrend. We mixed the two. Actually, we started on InSearch. It was about a 13-month project, which was driven by the purchase of the umbilical. And so about 2 months later, FlexTrend came to us and said, do you think you could do another one in parallel? Well, naturally, we thought we could and actually completed it. We did all the scheduling for it, and we did FlexTrends in 8 months from the time start of engineering, procurement, the fabrication of the pipe, launch and tow, and the tie-in. The first slide here is the InSearch 388 production area, and excuse me, at some point, I will bring that. I think I got my. It's set in water about 2,100 feet deep. It's a system that drills some wells through a template, and our part then was the 3-mile tie-in to a 3-well template, and to have 6 lines, 6 3.5-inch lines in a 28-inch casing, all insulated, and the umbilical, the hydraulic umbilical and injection units were in the umbilical. The pipe bundle was made up of the 6 lines, like I just described, insulated in a 28-inch casing, and this was a high-pressure system. It's 10,000 psi flow lines, hydraulic umbilical. We had spacers about every 12 meters, roughly, and all of this is then in the 28-inch casing. We made this up at Matagorda. Port Lavaca sits here, Houston's here, New Orleans is here, and we towed about the equivalent of from Houston to New Orleans, actually a little bit further, about 450 nautical miles was the tow distance. The bundle was made up complete. We installed sleds on the ends, you'll see these, and then tested everything in place. After everything was all set, we then towed. It takes us about 3 days to get here. We're traveling at about about 6.5 knots on the seabed. We tow everything on the bottom, and we actually passed through water depths of about 3,300 feet of this area, and then arrived in the production area. Now, to make these up, we have to design special spacers that are about every 12 meters And this is the test of the spacers. The spacers have wheels on the bottom, and we pull these back and forth on this 1,000-foot long tray to test the wheels, make sure it doesn't get stable, it doesn't roll, and make sure that the wheels hold up. We did not watch the speed limit. We kept everything running at actually about 6.5 knots, which is almost 10 miles per hour. So that was the development of the spacers. Now, if you tow a pipeline on the seabed, you have to protect the bottom of the pipe, and what we do is we install an abrasion coating on the lower half of the pipe. Now, the advantage is you protect your pipe, and by not installing it on the top part, you save about $27 a foot. And by having the weight on the bottom, then you're stable and the pipe won't roll. So you have several advantages of using that. Actually, we get out to these sites and where the pipes are spanned, we can look underneath, and this abrasion coating, the abrasion coating holds up extremely well.
What kind of coating are you talking about there? This is, now you may need to
It's
Just say it's
epoxy with
sand in it, but
with
it's,
sand in it, and it's called Seaguard.
No, Seaguard.
Seaguard, yeah.
But Bob, I was kind of involved in
Seaguard had a letter.
that bit. I think that's in that Sigma coating.
Yeah, Sigma, it's a Seaguard with a
Yeah, it's a cladding that they put on, I want to say it was like a quarter of an inch thick, something to that.
Well, whatever you want. It's used, they also use it for boat decks, for
Exactly.
walk areas.
Right.
It's
But it's just epoxy and sand, right?
Yeah.
epoxy and sand, basically.
It's the old Tide Guard too?
Exactly, very similar.
So I think there's 2 or 3 of these out, but the Seaguard has proven to be better for our application. Because we've got to make sure that it stays on.
Right, and the key thing was the anchor pattern of the steel, I think, too.
Well, it's just a brush sweep blast. In fact, we've changed that recently. Now we're going to a rough coat
Yes, sir.
paint, and then we're going to put it on the rough coat.
Actually, it starts here real thin, and then we get a little heavier, so it's feathered out on the side. We're doing it for 2 reasons. It is expensive stuff, and then we like to control our weight real close. This is like designing an airplane or an aerospace. Our weight is very critical for the net submerged weight. We usually end up with around 6 to about 11 pounds per foot. You can imagine all the weight that we have in the air, and then we place it in the water, the displacement, we're really aiming at a very fine line. And for every pound, you add a lot of extra horsepower if your pipeline is very long. The longest that we've towed in the Gulf of Mexico is 10 miles in single pieces. The first one for Placid, there was an 8-mile section, a 7-mile, a 1 mile, and a 10-mile bundle. And but we have towed, or we have pulled in a single piece 19 miles. It was 32 kilometers in the Persian Gulf, 1960. That's been the record so far. Here you can see the way that the abrasion coating is thin here, and then it gets thicker as it goes towards the bottom of the pipe.
Bob, what was the diameter of that 19-mile?
It was 32-inch, and we did it the hard way. We put concrete on it, and it was cast concrete on the island of Cargu, right next to Carg Island. And concrete absorbs water, so we had some very precise measurements to try to get this weight correct. It actually hit the water floating, and then after about an hour, you see it start to sink. You see bubbles coming up as it absorbed water. So we were on a very tight control there. This control is tight, but it's much easier because your steel does not have the absorption that the concrete does, so it's a lot easier to control. Here's a sled on the end of the bundle. The sleds will weigh anywhere from about 12 to 18 tons up to, in this case, 75 tons. And we have installed a sled on the end of the bundle that weighed 140 tons. Now, the reason I bring that up is because we could use that sled then as, say, a 4-well template with some manifolding, where you do everything onshore, test it all, and tow it out, and you're there. Instead of having to carry it all out in pieces with very expensive spreads. Say the J-lay spread around 350,000 a day, and then your spreads to set the templates, to tie them in, it really tremendous costs offshore. This is our steel bulkhead at the end of the pipe bundle that ties into the sled. Here's that bulkhead, here's Gene, and the bundle, or the pipe as it leaves the bundle and then ties into the connection system on the end of the sled. Another shot of the bulkhead. Now, when we tow these bundles, we tow the leading end, and we actually pick it up, and we'll tow it in an envelope from about 100 feet off the bottom to 500 feet off the bottom. When you start off the continental shelf with your tow wire out, your bundle gets higher above the bottom, and you get up to 500 feet and let out some cable, and so we control in that area. Now, on the trailing sled that we're dragging, we need to protect it. Well, this is a cow catcher that attaches onto the area just behind the sled. So if we get up against anything en route, then we actually move the sled aside as it travels. There are a couple areas where we have these dipiers that are below the surface, and as they push up, they vent calcareous material which grows columns like concrete. And it's these then that we are guarding against in this case, where it gets up against it and the sled will transit through the area. This is the Matagorda site, and we have both projects going on at the same time. The green is the inserts, the red is the flex trim, and we have the welding stations. We complete a weld every 2.5 minutes. So the makeup of the flow lines themselves is a fairly rapid operation. We have the stringer bead, hot pass, caps, X-ray station, and the outhouses. Here's a shot of the pipe receiving area, and then right where we go to the stringer bead for insert and flex trim. Another shot from the other side, essentially the same thing. The Matagorda area is quite adaptable. We have beaches that are that there's no people that can drive to them. The Colorado River sits over here, and the Port Lavaca ship channel sits over here. So it's a remote area. We bring everything in by barge, comes in over here, all materials, and the crews normally stay in Bay City, drive down to Matagorda, cross the Colorado River, and then are ferried down the beach. What we do is we make these up in about 4,000-foot pieces. Once made up of 4,000-foot length, we roll it over onto the storage area. Then they hook up water lines on the trailing end of these. We do a hydrostatic test with the flow lines in the storage area. This is about half the storage area. It goes about that much further off the slide. You can see the flow lines being made up. When we did this in 1991,
These were 95.
not 95, yeah, that's right. But there was a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico, and so we actually shut the site down, flooded the lines, and there's wires that we put on anchors to hold this down. We actually had water topping the area.
Did you have to widen that beach, or is that natural?
No, that's natural.
You have to clean it up.
Oh, yeah. Actually, what was interesting, I don't have a slide of this, is if you look at the area where we're working, it's very clean. And if you have a picture that you see the beach as it goes on further down, it's really dirty, a lot of trash. So we actually clean these beaches up in good shape to start with, to work on them. And then at the end, it's another cleanup process. This is the casing. It's strung like you would string normal overland pipeline, onshore pipeline. Just the string it, the abrasion coating on the bottom, and then we make this up just like you make up a dryland pipeline, except we don't have to have it on a lot of skids. We use styrofoam blocks just to make up on, and then just leave it laying on the shore. There's our welding stations, stringer bead, hot passes, fills, hot passes, and cap stations. Another shot of that same spread. Here's the flex trend bundle, the insert bundle all made up. The flex trend bundle was being fabricated. The flex trend was 4 miles long, the insert was 3 miles long. These that we're doing now are 7.5 miles long, 4 bundles. We're looking at others now right at 9 miles long. Once the casing is made up, then we fill the casing with water, hydrostatically test it, run the water out, dry it, and then we run a paint through it with a cable on it. Once it's through, then we put the cable on a winch, put the winch on rollers, have a load cell back here so that we can then start to pull the bundle sections into the casing. Once the casing, once the lines are all made up in the bundle, we then attach the lines to the backs of the sleds. So everything has been tested. This is the flex trend bundle. They're just completing the tie-in of the flow lines and then the tie-in of the casing. These were about 15-ton sleds. These are much easier to handle, although we have handled up to 40-ton sleds, and we've been designing up to about 250-ton sleds. On those sleds, you can do all kinds of things with those. You can have your well templates. You can be a 4 or 6 well template. You can have what we call a self-erecting riser on that template where it'll stand up. We've got all kinds of money savings ideas. Another shot of the flex trend bundle with the flex trend sled. Now, we've switched back now to insert. We've actually completed the flex trend, and here we're starting to pull the 6 insert slides into the casing. This is the point that we have the 6 bundled together, and then we're ready to spool the umbilical on top of the 6 lines. Here's our cradles that wrap around the bundle, hold it in place. These are these were insulated, and then we insulated the lines themselves. Here's the umbilical coming onto the top of the bundle. Now we're at the stage where we're tightening everything down, ready to start to put the insulation on. Oh, this you'll recognize FSSL.
Yeah.
Here, Bill. We put load or pressure sensor in this bundle, plus 6 temperature sensors, and this was the spooling then of this system into the bundle during the makeup. Here's the FSSL lines to the temperature and pressure sensor. Here's the insulation that we stored here, and then it's placed on top of the, and underneath the bundle. Here's how the sections go together. The insulation is on the pipe. We banded with soft banding material and then put duct tape to seal it. What was interesting, we tested this on shore. Actually, we had tested a number of lines on shore, and we noticed during the day we'd have the bundle heat up and a big pressure change during the testing. In this case, with the insulation on it, we noticed very little difference. And it's showing that this insulation is very
When we
effective.
did the pipeline pressure test, you know how you always see them? Didn't budge. They could change 10 PSI on a, that was on a 12,500 pound test. It was some ridiculous small amount, maybe more than 10, but it was quite extraordinary.
Yeah, we, once we got the flex trend out there on a location, hooked it up, their arrival oil is about 108 degrees, and they're saying it's very efficient, and they're saving about $1 million a year just in additives that they don't have to run in the bundle. Here's the bundle then being pulled into the casing. Takes about 15 minutes to make up the entire 160 foot. Get it all duct taped, the insulation, or the instrumentation wires on it, and then we make the hole then about, just about every 15 minutes for 160 feet. It's actually quite an efficient operation. Here's some shots then of the flex strand sled, the insert sled. This sled weighed 75 tons. It has 3 ports on top here that we installed, or that they installed jumpers on. There's a big difference in the connection systems. In some of them, we'll bring the sleds in, like we did on the Pan-Arctic. You remember that one we docked, and when we docked, then we placed collets, so the male collet within the female.
Right.
And an ROV went down and activated it and gripped, set, seal, and you can test your collets in place. This is the insert sled, the rear end of it with the cow catcher on it. The connection system is in front. The heavier the sleds get, the more buoyancy that we need. We keep the sled about 1 ton negative. In other words, it only weighs about 1 ton on the bottom. The trailing end of the flex train sled with its cow catcher. The lead ends, this is a little earlier slide. The buoyancy tank is not in place, but flex train was very close to the launching process. On the end of the insert bundles, we had about a 2,000 foot long 14-inch pontoon. The purpose of it now was to assist us during the connection process. If this is the template, we stand off, or we tow by about 1,000 feet off, about 400 foot past. We then release these chains. You see the chains there, they're tied up, and we release chains, and the entire bundle lifts off the bottom about 6 feet. And with a 3/4 inch wire brought from the base of the template, we have it connected here. We spool in, it takes about 3 to 4 tons of force then to deflect this around and dock it at the tie-in point. Back to flex trim, we just brought the cable to shore. We're starting through the process of placing the pipe into the surf and start deflecting the sled offshore. There's the tow vessel. We've actually moved the sled over. The pipe itself is in the water. Over the last 10 years, since '86, we've launched 10 lines, 9 of which have always been between November and March. And at first we thought that was bad, but now we find it's good, because once we get this in the water, the waves help us during the launching. You save about 12 hours during the launching process. The key is to keep a good winch, load saddle, and anchor on either end, so you always have control of it. That's the key point. Another shot of the lead sled just prior to launching the flex trim. The way they're launched, we set a couple of vessels up offshore with an anchor in front, and then we just winch the pipe laterally, like if this is the beach, we winch it laterally at the flex offshore. When we get out to roughly 6,000 feet from shore, we then can get underway. And we were just starting to get underway with this sled, and it's interesting. Earlier, we had a hard time to get them offshore, but we've now lined up enough horsepower that as soon as we put the power to it, we start leaving the beach with this high and dry at roughly about 2 to 2.2 knots, and it's very impressive. I'm on the boats and Gene's on shore watching this thing starting to move, and then actually having to run to keep up with it. Here's the rigging that we use. See this cable? This is a zipper type cable, and we have C fasteners that we can deploy these chains fairly rapidly. When we first did this, we went down with an ROV and cut the wire, and it took us 2 weeks. We now can deploy the chain in about 30 minutes. It's just a matter of starting at the end, lifting the chain, and then lifting the cable, and the chains deploy, and then the pipe comes up off the bottom and ready for the deflection process.
Does the chain stay attached?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, so you just got near bottom toe at that point.
Yeah, well,
It's just lifted up a few feet,
Right.
yeah,
just to clear obstacles.
Whatever points in the chain.
Till they reach equilibrium.
yeah, exactly. We have positive buoyancy on the system. If the chains weren't there, it would come to the surface.
Well, that's-
Then as the chain lifts up, it gets heavier. So then our neutral point's about 6 feet above the bottom. Oh yeah, this was just a nice shot that we took and just put this in. We have the cable to shore. The vessels are preparing to get lined up. We've used vessels on the Gulf Coast now that are actually the smallest of the vessels, like the North Sea has 26 vessels up to 250 tons bollard pull. On the Gulf Coast, up until recently, all we had was about 150 tons bollard pull. And if we go into the North Sea, we can tow longer sections. If we go into the Russian Arctic, they got the 500-ton bollard pull icebreakers. We can tow long sections like that. Russians are very interested in this also. This is the in-search sled, and we've just gone through the launching process for the pipe. We're bringing a cable to shore to connect to the end of it, and then we'll be ready to start moving this sled, or launching this sled. The launching process where we have a pontoon on it is it's just a matter of riding your side booms up next to it, lifting it, and then booming down, and you have about a 10 to 15 foot move over. So it's just this process of moving the bundle over, or we have the pontoon on. In the clear part, then we use the regular cradles that you cradle pipe into ditches on a dry lead pipeline. So we're just going through the process of getting it moved over. Murphy is always against us. He always gets it tied at the wrong time. And this was one day that it really was fairly calm. This was
As in February, too.
yeah, it was really amazing. We like waves, but it took us a while to get accustomed to launching in waves, because you think, oh my God, we're gonna lose it. As long as you hold both ends, you're okay.
Another shot of the launching process.
Just lift it up and move over and keep taking additional bites to get it into the water. Then in the area where we don't have the pontoon on it, then we use the regular cradles. And we have about a 30-foot offset. The side booms are traveling then at about 10 kilometers per hour, or about 6 miles per hour. And it's really interesting how flexible this is. This is actually our highest stress on the pipeline during this operation. Here we're stressing it to probably about 80% of the casing. Another shot from the other end during the cradling process. I took these pictures just to see where the pipe was going. This is the pontoon section, and the other pipe is really has started to launch itself. We have our winch holding it on this location until we get it sufficiently deep in the water and until our tide comes in. When our tide comes in, submerges the bundle section, we have our buoyancy and we're ready to start towing. Start our deflection and then we're towing. Here's a shot we took from the trailing sled. This is the cow catcher. This has been launched. We're ready to get the lead in launched. And it was interesting, it took us this day, and when we started to tow this from shore, you could just walk down the beach and see this bundle peeling right off the beach. When we got to this position here, then the sled got underway at about the 2.2 knots. This is the lead sled. A lot of times this happens at night. So we put markers on, strobe lights, radar reflectors, so we can track the sled as it's being launched from shore. Now, early the next morning, we were then at the point where we're got the cable to shore and we're ready to start launching, get those sled laterally deflected offshore. Here it's in about, it's 500 feet from shore. Here was about 1,500 feet from shore. And the sled's going, we're about 4,000 feet from shore here. We're actually ready at this time then to hook up in the towing mode. We have our launch mode, tow mode. All of the tie-ins, and we used oceaneering on them. We actually used them for the survey and ROV operations. There's 2 ROVs on the vessels. The way we tow it, we have the vessel in front, and we let cable out to keep that lead sled 100 to 500 feet above the seabed. And this tracks then the sled, so we have X, Y, and Z coordinates on it, so we know exactly where it's at along our tow route. Now we've arrived at the site, and this is just one of the shots. Actually, the pipe gets out there and it looks cleaner than when it came off the beach. It looks like it came out of the box from the factory. It really looks quite nice. Sled's the same way. These are some shots. This was at the 2,170 foot water depth, right opposite the connection points. Just took some shots of the sleds. This was the 70-ton sled. We'd rig valves open and close so that once we got it into position and confirmed it by the navigation system, that we then would do an initial flooding, which added about 13 kips of weight to stabilize it, make sure it wouldn't move. Here's the trailing end of the 2,000-foot section of the buoyancy pipe. This is the part then at the trailing end of where we're deflecting from. In other words, 2,000 foot back. It's stays in one spot, and we go through this deflection. Nice thing about this is that we leave this then in a curve, and that's our expansion system. When it heats up, it'll expand and it bows out in a curve. Here we're just at the stage of popping these chains loose, and this is the split second before it released. The chains deploy and it lifts off the seabed. This is lifted off the seabed from the last chain that was deployed, and you can't, I mean, it happens so quick that it's hard to get a picture of that. Here we're off the seabed, probably about a foot. The chain's deployed.
And that's probably 20, 40 pounds a square foot soil that you're looking at right there.
So the
That's why the
chain-
change, just,
Went right in.
oh yeah.
Another shot with the chain deployed, where it actually went over a little hole here, so this is spanned above the bottom. And, but she rides quite nice. Now, if you can imagine, we got this 50-ton sled, and, or 70-ton sled, and we've got a target the size of about 2 of these tables, well, a little larger, 8 foot square, and that's our target. We're a quarter of a mile straight up, 2,100 feet. So our objective is to put this sled into that square. And as we start deflecting it, if it isn't tracking right, if it's tracking ahead, we lower this from the surface. Now we've taken a supply vessel, lowered a 3/4 inch cable off of it, connected it onto this sled, which weighs 1 ton in water, 70 tons in air. And we've marked the back deck of the cable in feet, and we're standing behind this with the ROV, and if it's tracking in the wrong direction, we say, raise it a little, raise it 2 feet. And with the ROV, you can see it just lift up 2 feet, and you start deflecting it, and it changes your track of the travel, so that you're aiming at this 8 foot square, about 1,000 feet away. Here we're going through the deflecting process, and it was at this point that we said, well, it's not tracking right, let's raise it 3 feet. Here we raised it 3 feet. We track it some more. If it still isn't tracking right, we readjust the height above the seabed. Now here's, we were actually, in this case, then we started to get in too tight, so we said, well, raise it up more, and we got this to where the chain was just barely touching the bottom. Here's our 3/4 inch deflection cable. We're looking at this on the vessel, and here's our line that we're tracking. We want to hit the square underneath the semi-submersible. Here's the mooring lines from the semi-submersible. This was the vessel that was holding up the sled during the process, and this is the ROV vessel with the ROV behind the sled and just watching it. And so we're tracking it along this line. And when it starts doing this, we lower it a little, we raise it some to get it to advance, so we just are watching the track as we're going towards the target. Now, once we land in the target, it's confirmed, and we flood it, stabilize it, get it all set, and then these are the jumper connections that are installed to connect the bundle to the template. These are very expensive. If we look at the hard docking with collets, it's a 1. If we use the MacPack system, it'd be about a 2, and the jumpers are about a 5. But some people are kinky for jumpers.
Bob didn't agree with the owner's decision in this case.
We'd have never known.
Y'all pick that up?
Well disguised.
This was our,
These are salesmen.
Yeah.
You gotta understand.
this is our Placid sled. This weighed 140 tons. This thing, we've shown that you can launch, tow, position this. You can have it on the lead end, you can have it in the middle. You can put a 4, 6, or 8 well template on here. Manifolds. In this case, this was strictly a manifold system. But another shot of that sled, and that's it. Be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, yeah, one thing I just mentioned, Bill, that video, I forgot to bring one over here. I was over at a meeting, I didn't show it, but that's another thing. We've got that little 8-9 minute video, everybody here might like to see it. It's, we used it at OTC, and it was also about this same bundling. It was similar to what Bob's just showing you. There's just a little animation in there on some of the tracking, some of that stuff makes it a little easier to understand how it's done.
You lent me a copy of it, did I ever give it back to you?
No, I just gave it to you.
Bill
That's
Hussey
yours.
has it then.
Okay, we won't go into this anymore.
We'll talk about that later. Hey, any questions?
Yeah, when you take your bundle out there before you start deflecting it in, what type of polish do you have, for positioning it?
Yeah, that's a big, that depends a lot on,
Yeah. The further you get away from your connection point, the larger your target is.
say 50 by 100 feet would be a
Normal
typical
target,
kind of size.
800 feet away, but if we want a larger target and we move further away, in fact, we always are switching the targets. And we have a model at our office that when we actually tow in, we've done all the deflections modeled ahead of time. So we establish our target, where it should be, the size of it. And always something will happen, like on the in-search tow, we got out there and we found that the template had moved 60 foot towards us. So we were 60 foot too long.
2 different surveys.
Yeah, the template really didn't move.
As far as we're concerned.
So then, our first target, instead of going through the middle of it, we went north of it about 100 feet, and then made a bow to use a pipe, and come down into the next target, and we went just to the south of it. So that when we deflected, we hit the 8 foot square box. We actually hit the 8 foot square targets at both ends. So the key is to be flexible. And right when that started, we got back on the model and then remodeled it completely during the time we were towing and going underneath the mooring lines. And so it's, now, longitudinally now with the most recent development is, if we got our sled and we have a target that's 50 foot wide by, say, 100 foot long, we're now at the stage where we can hit the middle of the target within about 3 feet. We set an ROV behind it. We tow into within about 100 feet of it, put the ROV behind it, and then power up. And when we power up, the vessel on the surface moves about 900 feet, and then the pipe starts to move. So he starts counting down, your 5 foot, 10 foot, counting down, and we have an all stop, probably about 20 foot short, and power up again and just ease it into the target. And we're able to hit a target now within about plus or minus 3 feet longitudinally, which is really good. Now, if transversely we're off, well, we back up, power up, not enough to move it, but pick it up and then move the vessel back and forth to set it out. So we got very good control on positioning in the primary target. Then the secondary target for the deflector will be straight back.
So obviously, though, the problem is the other end.
Yeah.
Because this has to just be done by calculation. And so what Bob's describing to you, as you get in near the targets, where you can actually interrogate an on-bottom array at each end, you find out really how long it needs to be, as opposed to what you thought it needed to be. Because until you get in that position, you're only going by surface navigation, effectively your GPS at the time. So at that point, we now know it's going to be X number of feet too long, and we hope it's going to be too long because it's probably just too short. At that point, we'll make an adjustment in those targets to adjust to the actual length. As Bob's saying, he'll actually change the tow right there at the last minute, move it out, move it in, and to make the connections easier. But once you get this thing up off the bottom, like Bob described, it's quite compliant. So you can come out and put in, put a weight down and add a little change in the curvature, and there's a lot of ways to get it to finally fit.
You tow vessels, they typically have valve insert thrusters?
Oh, yeah, joystick control at least. We haven't, none of them have been fully DP'd, I don't think, but certainly joystick, yeah, you've got to have that capability.
When you drop the chains on the flotation section, drop them all, or you just drop them?
Yeah, you
Or
just
you keep
zip
walking
them.
back?
You unzip all of
You
them,
just
so
unzip
all of
them.
them deploy, we don't drop the chains, but they just deploy.
That's what I'm saying.
And the pipe comes right
Yeah,
off. the
yeah, all
bottom, and
2,000
it's-
feet.
You can't believe how limber this is, we're taking advantage of a real limber piece of.
And the ROV would come along and snip them on the sled.
What I was thinking of, so that sets your point of where it touches, that sets your touchdown.
Right, but you've already established though where you wanted the sled to be and got it in its target before you do that exercise.
And then when you pick up on the sled, does that change your touchdown point?
No, it's far enough back, all we'll pick up is maybe about 500-600 feet. And then from there back, the chains are all in contact with the seabed.
Yeah, I mean,
Just that 500 or 600 feet then lets us advance. And then when we put it back down, then it kind of retreats as we're.
So it's just like booming out with a crane, and you boom out, you pick up, boom out, pick up, boom out, pick up.
Exactly.
Except you're doing it underwater, blind, without knowing which direction you're going. other
Well,
than-
we've got some, we'll have some transponders on that flotation section so that we're monitoring the curvature of it as it's going. So, Bob's watching the end of it as it starts coming in, but if it starts getting off track, it may be because it gets hung up.
Yeah.
So we're watching the rest of the track, the part that lifts off. And the length of that depends upon the kind of curve you want to put it in. But typically, it's about 2,000 feet.
I had two questions, I guess. The land you used to assemble the bundles, did you lease that from the state or from the government?
Lease that from owners.
No,
Oh.
that island is privately owned.
Oh, it is private one. I didn't know if it was part of nature.
Basically, the beach is public property. But if the beach has no road access, then, there's nobody to go on it. They don't have the right to go across the private property to get to the beach. So legally, anybody would have a right to come up there in a boat and walk along the beach and
See
pick up
what's going
seashells,
on.
whatever they want to do. But they're not allowed to go to the area where the grass starts growing. I mean, at that point, it's private property.
And another thing, did you select the site? I mean, I know it's long and straight, but also for, I guess, ease of access, so
That's because it's private.
minimize the number of pipeline crossings you might.
Well, there are actually quite a few crossings to make there. There are a number right there where we're going off the beach, which, you can't really help that. But no, it's selected primarily because of the private ownership.
Do you, I guess, sandbag or something where you're going to cross? Because I imagine that rough coat acts like a knife edge. You have to
Well,
plow.
of course, the lines legally, they're, I hate to keep using that word because I'm no lawyer, but they're supposed to be buried 6 feet, in the shallow areas. Now, this last time, so far, up until recently, we have never had to do anything. We check them, make sure there's nothing exposed, tow right over. The track that we're showing you there typically is 6 to 8 inches. That's that's all we're getting when we tow the line
Oh.
through. But the last time, one of them was only buried 1 foot. So we were kind of stuck here with our owners, what do you want to do? So we just went and met with them and told them, hey, here's your pipeline, we got to tow over it. And then we went ahead and it made up a scheme to put a bridge over it. Even though, we told them, by the way, you're not supposed to have it buried 1 foot. And then we went ahead
That
and
you're
put
supposed to inspect it now to make sure it's not.
well, we told them we weren't gonna tell anybody, they do what they want, but, we just wanted it was really just a matter of courtesy to let them know we were gonna put a bridge over it, we were gonna cross over it, they're welcome to come out and be on the boat and watch it and check it afterward, whatever they wanna do. And then we'd take the bridge up after we're through. So we did do that on one line, and did have, when we crossed the bridge.
If you can imagine this, Gene is an old 20-year Brown and Root hand, and he is talking like the converted. He goes on.
Well, we've done this a few times now. The first time I was perhaps skeptical. You see 6 miles of pipeline laying out there on the beach, you're not really sure that this is what you ought to be doing. But I can tell you now that it definitely does work.
Seeing those scenes from Matagorda Island were quite interesting. When I was with Moak back in the old days, we used to use that same location to set jack-up drilling rigs, which set up by triangulation.
Right.
And
So you set up there.
I knew how to run all of the civil engineering type instruments, so I was usually conscripted into service for this. It was always pretty pleasant. Mike, just to the northeast there on that island is an old Navy-based bombing range type thing. We used to always make friends and enjoy talking to the cadre that were permanently stationed down there from Fort Sam Houston. Their job was to feed the quail and clean the fish for the officers that came down to fish on the weekends. I don't know if that's still there or not.
Well, well, sort of what it is. The Cullen family owns a large part of that, and it's kind of a little private hideaway for them.
Yeah, we stayed at their camp house,
They do.
by the way, so that worked out pretty good. Well, some of you all came in a little late, and I had introduced these people and indicated that along the way, the Offshore Technology Conference had given 7 outstanding awards to this company for some of the work they've done. And this is an example of it, and it's great. And to show our appreciation, we have a little gift for you all. It's one of the gifts, early, used by man, now made from some of the finest natural ingredients around, carefully molded, heat-treated, cooled and polished and packed and shipped to Houston at very great expense. We know it as the Paragon Cup. And we have one for each of you and one for a lady named Alice that helped me organize it.
All right, well, we can certainly take care of that.
We thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Let me ask you a question. What's the scariest you've ever been on?
What?
What's the scariest you've ever been on?
There's a lot of, I mean, your life passes in front of your eyes. And you think,